All right, Grizzle's back at Beaver Creek Precious Metals Summit, and I was lucky enough to run into the management team at one of the highest quality copper developers out there, Hot Chili. I'm joined by Nikki Adshead-Bell, she's chairman, and Christian Easterday, he's CEO. Thank you both for being with me.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me kick it off for Nikki. So copper's been holding up surprisingly well given the weakening economic data we see in China, a little bit in the US. Is that a powerful indicator for you of how tight the market may actually be?
Oh, well, absolutely, but almost everything is a powerful indicator for me about how tight the market might be. I've drunk the Kool-Aid on copper. I can't believe that the world hasn't grasped about this. Is probably one of the best investment opportunities out there. Copper is the critical commodity. The world as we know it today ceases to exist without it. And production, this is not my research, this has been done by multiple entities. Production starts to fall off a cliff starting 2025. And you are not seeing the price reflect that. We have an inelastic supply response to demand. If the price skyrockets, it'll be years before new supply comes online. So you have this perfect storm of events where you have decreasing supply, and I think there's a massive opportunity here, and the copper price doesn't reflect that. And so for me, the incentive price has to be materially higher than where it is today.
I want to follow up with that thought. So what do you think the incentive price needs to be for that supply to come on that we need?
I started saying $6 to $8 a couple of years ago, and I think everybody thought I was crazy, but I've noticed a few pundits now saying $6 to $8. And I say $6 to $8 because I don't want everyone to think I'm completely insane, but I think copper could go parabolic. And we have seen this time and time again in specific commodities, lithium. You can't call the top, you can't call the bottom, but what I find intriguing about copper is everybody acknowledges that there is a supply crunch coming. This is it's not a unique viewpoint. What people aren't doing is behaving like that's happening. And so you have this unique time, I think, to become invested and exposed to what I think is a very compelling thesis.
Yeah, so it's not actually healthy for the price to go too high, right? You want the market to get ahead of it and say if they need 5 or 6, stay at 5 or 6 for a few years. You don't want to see that what happened with lithium where it goes to 10 for a period of time. That's not what the market really wants.
Well, I think that would be awesome, don't get me wrong.
For a period of time, yes.
For a period of time. Because if it goes to 10, everybody's running around desperately trying to be exposed to copper. So, I think it's a great time. I think that for companies like us that are developers, it's how do we best manage this time when there's less interest in the sector.
Yeah, exactly. Christian, you guys have Hot Chili's had more success than most funding your development. It's not easy out there. Could you just, so I'm wondering, take us through where the current landscape sits. You know, does it feel different than when copper was in the mid to high 3s? How are your conversations going around Beaver Creek? I'd love to get your take.
Yeah, I think that there's a surprisingly consistent amount of interest in copper equities. And, you know, what Nikki said, you know, this dichotomy where we see an inevitable outcome to a supply problem in copper, but the market behaving like that's not in front of us. So we see copper equities that have not fared very well, particularly in the last 12 months, and even surprisingly at higher copper prices. So we just went through a pretty wild ride with copper this year, you know, starting down at the sort of $3.65 level and making a rapid ascent to $5.20. But like all things that go up really quickly, you don't really want to see that because they also come down quickly. But what happened, you know, in that period around April and May, and we had a short squeeze in the market. These are the early signs of a really supply-constrained market when that starts happening. Now we're starting to see some rebuild in stockpiles, some questions over exactly how much can China continue to consuming around 57% of global copper, and a relatively sluggish demand overlay. And that's created a pullback to around $4 a pound and $4.20 around that level at the moment. And I saw a great article from the Fin Review in Australia a couple of days ago saying, is the bottom in with copper? And I looked and the price was $4.14. And I thought, this is a hell of a good place to be bottom. You know, I like this bottom. What it showed for us, and you talk about, you know, funding and what's the landscape like, the interest is there. We found that, you know, when the price moved to $5.20, it was a signal, and a lot of the funds started moving, and they moved very quickly. Hot Chili was in a great position. We were receiving a lot of attention from strategic money at the time. And that allowed us to literally raise a book of $48 million in 48 hours.
Wow.
We closed $32 million out of that raising that we took, and that has positioned us in a really strong place to be able to deliver our catalyst toward the end of the year, being fully funded into the back end of next year in really a market that is not that good for equity raisings and funding capability. So while I acknowledge that this is the third year of a depressed equity market, Hot Chili has been able to fund very efficiently through that, firstly with the Cisco investment that we talked about here last year, and now to have a 90% supported institutional raising that's given us a lot of new shareholders, and that's put us in a very good position.
Yeah, it shows that in a market where it's not easy to raise money, it's the best companies that are able to get the deals done. So
that's right. We're in a pool of 5 or 6 projects. Well, now with the Philo takeover, we're sitting within a pool of 5 projects, not 6 projects anymore, that are capable of producing 100,000 tons of copper a year, so meaningful, and that are potentially near term. There's just so few of us available. It starts to get a lot easier for people or companies that are in unique positions like Hot Chili is.
Great. Now I wanted to talk about Philo a little bit because they got taken out. BHP was willing to buy a big chunk of them for almost 2 times NAV. And you have a bunch of companies in the space, high quality companies trading at a small fraction of that. You guys are one example. I'm just wondering if you have an opinion on what it will take in the market for investors to start saying we need to close that gap.
Yeah, and I mean to be trading down at almost a tenth of that, where Hot Chili is, that gives us a huge amount of incentive as to where our share price could go. BHP coming into the Vicuña, which is the Huasco Valley area, is very meaningful for Hot Chili. This is the world's largest copper company coming in. Oh, sorry, not largest copper company yet. Maybe will be shortly if they get their dreams. But it's a big endorsement for what's going on in Huasco, and Hot Chili is in the box seat for the supply of water to the Huasco region. Also studying a port for bulk tonnage copper concentrate to go out of the Huasco region. So it's been a very encouraging signal for us in particular.
Great.
I might just add a couple of comments to that. Philo, wonderful discovery, obviously Lundin company. I think one of the reasons why BHP was attracted to that, there's been euphoria in that company. Fantastic drill results. I would argue they transacted at the perfect time when the dream is alive on the exploration side of things. And for those people that look at the Lassonde curve, exploration tends to give us the best valuation because reality isn't yet embedded in the story. And so I think some of the malaise perhaps that the developers such as us suffer from is we've become real and we're in the more boring phase of the development curve because we're systematically ticking those development boxes, and I think adding a great deal of value, embedded value doing that, but we're not producing exciting drill results. And that's what the market likes to react to.
Yeah, so for you just need to keep executing, and then you'll eventually get to that point of there's 2 great points to be in the Lassonde curve. You're getting very close to that second spot, so you just have to make sure you get there, do it a smart way.
Really, the only time you get rewarded for being a developer is in a bull market. And we believe that there is a bull market coming, and our job is to try and control those levers that we can so that we're the best position for that bull market that we can be. And we have a real asset, and an asset that could be advanced aggressively if money was no object.
Okay. Now I wanted to get into a unique piece of your business that you're spinning out as the water company. You talked a little bit about it, Christian. Maybe could you expand on the benefits you're going to get to move your project forward and just the benefits in general of that company in the region? Yeah,
and this is probably what we would call non-traditional excitement that Hot Chili has in this deep trough of the Lassonde curve that is the painful stage that the developers have to go through to get to the promised land. Everyone forgets about what the growth potential looks like on the other side of that hill. And so, for us, we have identified a very strategic asset in the water licenses that we control and the water assets that we control after 10 years of permitting advance on our copper project. We found ourselves in an environment where you're not allowed to take water out of the ground anymore for major mining projects in Chile. We're in the Atacama, it's a very water-stressed area. And we've now split all of those assets into a separate subsidiary company called Huasco Water. And we are very much looking at monetizing those assets to pay for the copper project to be built. And also to be able to outsource the water infrastructure, which makes another very large capital saving for the build of Costa Fuego. And so there's been a lot of noise in the Chilean market and a growing trend of big mines to outsource infrastructure and take large funds in from the sale of those assets. And no better an example has just occurred about 6 or 7 weeks ago now, where Antofagasta took its water assets from the Centinela mine that is about to be expanded from 160 towards 300,000 tonne per annum producer. It's a big boy. It's also a saltwater processing project, so it's very meaningful again to Costa Fuego being another saltwater processing project. So they've taken their assets, they've sold it to a consortium for $600 million. It is now going to build those water assets for the expansion, a $380 million price tag. So it's sold $600 million, it's saved $380 million, and there's your precedent for how Hot Chili is thinking about that. That's very, very unique. I don't know of any other developer or junior story that has an embedded asset that potentially covers the equity side. And we talk about why is this Lason trough there? Is it boring that we're making it real and about to fund a project? Or is it the realization that building a big project is going to dilute your shareholders to almost oblivion if it's something big like what Hot Chili is doing? This is unique in that Hot Chili has the answer as to how we're going to fund a large component or a lot of that equity side. So that is about something that we're now trying to surface in value. We're having a lot of discussions with potential large off-takers in the area. We've identified not just a saltwater supply business to Hot Chili, but also the potential to have that upgraded to a desalination supply business for the entire region. And that is something that's very, very attractive to some of the biggest names in water investment in the world.
Great.
And yeah, another thing I was going to add is without water, there is no project. And so no water, no project. And we provide a solution for that for a number of development projects that don't currently have water licenses. So, and the one thing that we need to do as an industry, sorry, I'm a terrible interrupter, that we need to do as an industry is we really need to be working together. We're an industry that is reputationally challenged, that is inherently unloved, and that's largely because we do a very poor job of selling ourselves well. But we need to be working together to solve some of these big box-ticking issues, of which water is one of them. Wherever you are in the world, whether it's a water-poor part of the world like where we are, or if you're in Brazil in a water-rich part of the world, water is a key sensitivity. And it's how do you solve that in a way that's palatable to communities, to regulators and to governments.
Yeah, so it's fantastic to have potential customers there in the Huasco region with no water assets, that have these big projects and finally have the actual ability to not have to go through a 10 or 12 year permitting timeline. That is the advantage that we have. It's a first mover advantage because these permits take so long. Some people say, what were you doing all this time? Why did it take 10 years? But when you're one of the only companies...
You say you go get a permit then, you see.
One of the only companies that's gone through it and you've gone through every step of a very convoluted process. These are the barriers that exist to new supply coming on quickly. Why do copper projects take 20 years to go from discovery to production? And people say, oh yeah, we know about that. And then they quietly go, but Christian, could you tell us what's holding you up? Why aren't you just putting this in production? And you say, the water assets on their own have taken 10 years so far. And we've got another 18 months in front of us on the second application. 12 years. These are big, big items that big copper projects have to put in place to be built. So for us to have the only maritime concession to supply water to the entire region with 6 major undeveloped projects all around us, the biggest names in the industry, with BHP, Lundin, Teck and Newmont at Nueva Union, Antofagasta and Barrick at Encierro, our friends at Atex with their new discovery at Valeriano. This is a huge benefit to these mines, which can now have a pathway to actually accelerating the projects without a 12-year impediment.
So it took 12 years, but it sounds like there is a payoff at the end. You're getting pretty close to that payoff.
Yeah, and with deals like Antofagasta showing to the market, the mining industry doesn't know a lot about the water industry and vice versa. We're coming up to speed very quickly, and these assets have really widened our eyes as to what funding optionality we now have for Costa Fuego. That's something very unique, as you said.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle. Thank you for fleshing that out.
It's a real game changer. Yeah.
Very cool. Now, just before I let you guys go, could I ask you, what are the upcoming milestones for Hot Chili that you think will be key to keeping the market's attention?
Yeah, look, these are going to sound really boring again, but they're these really important milestones that de-risk projects. And pre-feasibility on our copper project, a pre-feasibility coming on our water project. These are things that open a number of doors for Hot Chili, allow the type of investors that we're dealing with and we're bringing up to speed, and to suddenly move to the next stage, the pre-preparation for project financing. And that allows Hot Chili to start to be able to contemplate how we demonstrate the value that's in the project versus the value that's in the market. We'll be in a very strong position to assess our strategic investor options following that point. So those key catalysts on development are coming, and also we're working very hard behind the scenes on further commercial transactions as we put together the last of the consolidation of this project. We're putting in place the last pillars of growth. We have a large amount of our funds set aside for drilling. At the moment we're paused, we're waiting for some key developments. If the company is in a good position to secure those, then we'll be going after the low-hanging fruit that we can transfer into resource growth, mine life extension over a very short period of time. Remembering that we only have about 18 months left to be able to take something, drill it, incorporate it into a mine plan, or it's not going to be making the bankable financing.
Great. Well, that was an amazing overview of Hot Chili. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Nikki. And this is Grizzle reporting from the Precious Metals Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beaver.